Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Thursday. It is May the 1st. We are starting a new month. I think today is May Day. Is that what they call it? May Day? And we are rolling live. We appreciate you guys being here. For all of you that are hanging out over in our Rumble chat, I'm going to make an interesting appeal to you in a little bit. I don't know if it'll hit with you all, but I have a request. I want to try something. Mostly because many of you have seen the numbers that we get on Rumble have precipitously disappeared. And these happened and coincided with a change that happened over on the Rumble platform and nothing that we were doing over here in particular. So just an idea. Some of you will be into it. Some of you will be not. That's okay. We got a lot to go over today. We're obviously done with the first 100 days. I found some ridiculous things and some ridiculous takes, including a final piece that we're going to end with, which is the New York Times stating that it is time to fight. We must resist Donald Trump to save our democracy. In other words, the New York Times is going to do the New York Times, which is what they've been doing for the last 8-10 years. So that's interesting. And in order to save the democracy, in order to sort of bring forth the hopeful vision that the political left has, they're going to do the thing you could not imagine. They're going to bring back Kamala Harris to speak in public and let Tim Walz try to lead. So they're back in the news. So that's very funny to me. That's where we're going to go. Also, some weird news, a little bit more about the speed of government versus the actual speed of government, the hopeful speed of government, the thing that we were promised and we kind of got a little taste of. The dangerous thing I think that the Trump administration did starting right off the bat, right at the inauguration, is Donald Trump started with massive speed. He came out of the gates signing executive orders while he was at the inauguration, right? And that set an expectation that we were going to see something move in a way that government had not previously done. And there are examples of that being the case, which is a real problem for us. Because as we look around at the rest of the government, especially those who are in our lawmaking end, they are not moving at that. They are moving at the typical speed. I found out this morning reading Catholic Vote's Loop that Brian Birch, who is the president of Catholic Vote and a friend or a former colleague, whatever you want to call it, he still has not even been confirmed to his post as the ambassador to the Vatican, to the Holy See. Now, in a moment when we just lost a pope, this would be probably a good time to have a full-time ambassador there. And yet, slow rolling, speed of government, not quickly. It's the biggest complaint I've had from my friends that still work in the government is that, things, even though they have good ideas, they can't actually enact them because the speed of government is so slow. So that's where we're going to go with today's show. And I've got a bunch of interesting examples, some good clips. There's been some people at the White House, which is definitely not what I wanted when it comes to seriousness. Putting Don McCree sitting out in the White House press corps. I get that they're trying to thumb their nose at the so-called traditional media or the legacy media, but man, it's not great. All right, while you're sitting here, make sure you guys have liked our video. Make sure you have subscribed to the channels, and I will make a request to you about YouTube versus Rumble in a little bit. But again, you can find us over on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. You can always find us now on YouTube, streaming in 4K. I found out that 50% of the people that watch on YouTube actually watch on a TV or a computer, and you're going to get a better signal if you guys watch on a computer or a TV. If you normally cast it, check us out on YouTube because there's a 4K signal going there. Again, KyleSeraphin.com will get you to our locals if you want to see the show notes, which will give you actually the links that we use for every single article that I cover. Those are always in the show description. It's free, and you can also join up as part of the team. And then lastly, Spotify. Give us a comment over on Spotify. It's KyleSeraphinShow.com. It's free to watch over there. You're not going to have the pop-up ads if that's a thing you're watching in the reverse, and I get good data from it, so I appreciate that. Let's start with something because we're going to be talking about supply chain. There is no better time to think about it. I actually saw multiple different articles trying to put the fear out of God that you might be without things like the Chinese shutdown as the tariffs start actually hitting. The expression slow boat to China has some meaning, right? And what it means is that the tariffs have not even been imposed on most of the stuff. Those things haven't even made it to the United States. If you guys are Temu shoppers or so on, you know what I'm talking about. So we're just going to ask you right now, what if grocery shelves suddenly went empty tomorrow? Would you be ready? Would you be prepared? My family has My Patriot Supply. We keep an emergency food supply underneath our stairwell. We're stacked up with multiple 90-day emergency food kits because that's the way to do it. You got to prepare in advance before the emergency happens. My Patriot Supply has helped millions of Americans prepare for the worst case scenario. They have over 75,000 5-star reviews. And again, it's the one that we personally keep on hand underneath the stairwell. You can get it right now for the same deal that I bought it for. Spent my own money on it. It was $200 off when I got it. That's the huge discount. It's the one that I got, and I don't think they've offered it since we've started working with them. Recommend that. That goes back like at least 6 or 8 months. This is not something they do all the time. If you guys want to get the best cost per calorie, this is a way to do it. Their food kit gives you over 2,000 calories per day per person. It lasts for up to 3 months, actually stretching out the real food. But if you wanted to store it, you can store it for up to 25 years. It ships free and can get to you in as little as 2 days. If you want to go ahead and fire and forget and solve that problem, you want to make sure that you take possession of it right away, and fast shipping can help. Okay, preparelikekyle.com is the website. Again, it's preparelikekyle.com. We can't control what's going on in the world. We can't control how fast things come in from China or what the economy is going to do around us. What we can do is prepare when we have the foresight to see it. $200 off right now on that 90-day emergency food kit at preparelikekyle.com. It'll be the first thing you can see. They've got some other options as well if you want to supplement. All right, let's start with news of the weird. We'll dive into that right now. So sometimes I see something that's so dumb and so weird that I must cover it. And I'm not talking about James O'Keefe sitting and setting up a 2-camera angle and talking about how he's not suicidal and having a dramatic pause and multiple takes so that he can do a rehearsed sigh about how he's going to go dark. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about CNN coming up with this story, which was on their main page. And usually right now, I move to ABC or CBS or NBC for sort of my first start because CNN has gotten so far off the rails and was not being a great example. But this got moved to the front because it's maybe in the top few stupidest things that I've read in the last couple of years. It's got to be. From stopping dust and dirt to getting from getting into your eyes to promoting blinking as a reflex, eyelashes do more than look pretty. I'm talking about an article entitled "Why Men Are Shaving Off Their Eyelashes." I didn't even know what that would be. I have absolutely no idea where this trend started. And apparently it's because J.D. Vance has long eyelashes and people speculated on whether or not he was wearing makeup. Speaking of people being dramatic. This is a real story that is really written by CNN. Then they go into a series of people about internet videos on TikTok and Instagram and X showing brave men getting blades very close to their eyes in barbershops from Turkey to New Zealand to stub out their lashes and try to look like they don't have them. Now, as a guy who does all of his own hair and grooming, and I've been cutting my own hair since I was probably 18, I guess, since I went into college. Since that, I have occasionally and accidentally shaved an eyebrow off before, or part of it. It looks silly for a while, so be it. But the idea that you would care as a man about what your eyelashes look like because you thought they were too feminine, that's just a bridge too far for me. Apparently, it comes from something that they're going to blame this on Andrew Tate, which is a weird thing, the so-called manosphere, which I can't even figure out what the heck that means, and they also blame it on tech bro jocks. I just want you to take just a moment and process tech bro jocks. Imagine who that is in your head. Like Meta chief executive Mark Zuckerberg. When I think of bro jocks, I always think of Mark Zuckerberg, that traditional figure of masculinity. I don't know. He said, quote, "A culture that celebrates the aggression a bit more has its own merits." Nothing like a man to just mealy-mouthed words and say things in a strong and aggressive way. Like a culture that celebrates aggression has its own merits. I don't know. I don't see it. And again, this is fueled apparently because you had J.D. Vance who had longer eyelashes and people speculated he was wearing eyeliner, and people like George Santos had to get in and weigh in on it. This is the story. There's an entire story. This is longer than some of the real news articles that are out there. Anyway, it made me realize that we're living in this cartoon. I mean, it's not surprising to us that we are. But sometimes they really just kind of pull back the curtain. They show us how the animators are working. And this is one of those stories. Why men are shaving off their eyelashes, not their eyebrows. Again, the eyebrow thing, I get it. As a guy who's dropped a razor on my eyebrows before. It happens. Look, to the best of us. Let's talk about somebody who's got some bushy eyebrows and not eyelashes, who also has I would call Mike Johnson a tech bro. I would call him a congressional masculine bro. If the standard is Mark Zuckerberg, then I guess I could go with that. This is coming from NBC News, actual news-ish. Republicans hit early snags as they start crafting a massive bill for Trump's agenda. This is the government that I expect. This is the crux of the issue and the problem that we're having right now, to me. Donald Trump started off hot and heavy. As I said, he was signing executive orders at the desk on the stage while they were doing a parade. Do you guys remember how wild that was? You're like, oh my God, like, this is what we're about. Like, we're going to move like a dude who came in on a hostile takeover for a business. The whole pitch that people heard was Donald Trump has a business sense, that he's not going to just do business as usual in the government. We're not going to go slow. We're not going to do the thing, make excuses. Things are going to be different this time. Okay, great. And then right away, we're here. GOP lawmakers have yet to make the most of their difficult decisions, like things on Medicaid and taxes. There's some inter-party skirmishes that have erupted, and everything is going to go slowly, like a boat coming in from China that's been hit with many tariffs. Republicans are hitting snags as they begin the work of crafting a bill for President Trump's sweeping domestic policy agenda. They haven't even made their hardest decisions yet. Fresh off a 2-week recess, the House committees have begun marking up their respective pieces of packages, and they aim to extend Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts, boost funding for immigration enforcement and the military, increase the debt ceiling, their hunt for steep savings to pay for it all. Republicans are starting with some of the lowest hanging fruits, blah, 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 blah. And so now we get into the actual work of what our Congress does. It's not hearings. It's not Fox News hits or NBC News hits or MSNBC hits. The job of our lawmakers is to make laws, and most specifically, they are supposed to fund the government. And they just keep adding and adding every single year. I always go back to this little time capsule. It used to sit on the shelf over my shoulder in the old studio space. And it's that book, Term Limits, by Vince Flynn. And I'm not talking about term limits because Senator Grassley is 91 years old and typing with the index knuckles of his fingers as he bonily clucks along on a T9. I'm not talking about those kind of term limits. I'm talking about term limits where they said, how on earth have we accepted? The premise of that book is the American people are looking at the members of Congress and seeing that they don't do the job that we actually put them there to do, which is actually do one thing only. You don't need to do hearings. You don't need to be investigators. You don't need to do a discovering. You need to stop spending more money than you have. You need to fund things within your limit. You need to actually do the work of looking at every individual agency and passing line item bills. And if you recall, the story with Mike Johnson getting the speakership when they removed Kevin McCarthy was one thing and one thing only. It was the biggest single piece. This was the MAGA, this America First agenda. We wanted to see single issue bills. We wanted you, our lawmakers, to fund individual departments by line item so we could see what it was you were doing and have a single individual vote and not tie spending on Medicaid in all the states at the same time to our military defense bills or to everything else that's going on, pushing for gold card visas for wealthy foreigners or into like crazy changing the debt ceiling or paying for immigration enforcement. You shouldn't have these things tied together. There's been a proposal that I've heard, and I didn't like it initially. And I think that on first gasp, all of you will go like, no, I don't like this. But I've been convinced. I think it's time to pay members of Congress more money, which sounds like the opposite of anything you would ever hear me say, and probably the opposite of what most of you would think about right away. So consider this proposal, because there are serious people talking about this. And when I hear it, I went like, you want to give these people more money for not doing their job? People do their job when they are properly incentivized to do so, and financial incentives are a real thing. Much of what we complain about in Congress is the ability to go out and do insider trading, to spend time doing Fox News hits and fundraising and other BS like that. We also hear that people are abusing the authorities and they're listening to, different lobbyists and special interest groups and so on. Right now, members of Congress make slightly less than $200,000 a year. And the argument has been put to me that it is incredibly difficult to imagine living in a house in D.C. and then also maintaining a second residence where your constituents live, where you ran out of. So for 200 grand a year, how many of you could maintain a house in wherever you live right now and then also maintain a residence in Washington, D.C.? I think the answer is actually very, very few. Having lived in the Washington, D.C. area, most of them either live in Maryland or they live in D.C. proper. A few of them live in Arlington. Maybe the gun owners do. It's a lot of money to live in those places. So the conditions, and I think we could double their salaries. I think we could even come close to tripling it. You could put it close to like $500,000 a year, but you can't trade any stocks. And you can't accept lobbyists buying you meals. You have to do it on your own. I think the American taxpayers would actually be okay with the idea that this is a term of servitude where you are going to make more money than most Americans will ever make in their life. But you have to do two things. You have to maintain two households, one in your constituents where you are in your district, and one in the area of Washington, D.C., which sucks. You couldn't pay me like $500,000 a year would be right on the edge of what it would take for me to want to go live in D.C. I'm just being honest as me. I imagine there's a lot of guys like me that probably have a decent idea, that understand a little bit about government, that know and have strong opinions, that are probably pretty intelligent, and they would look at being in Congress as a penalty, that they would be waiting for that moment they didn't have to do it anymore. So what if we removed some of the things that we hated and you added that, yes, you make enough money to support yourself and even a little bit more, and you could actually put some money away on it, but you can't take any additionals. There are some bills that have been floating around out there talking about whether or not they could pass something about insider trading, whether or not they could remove the ability to trade stocks. I think that is the answer. If you had judges that had conflict of interest, when I was working for the FBI, the DOJ has a strong policy about conflict of interest. And what it says is if you have stocks, unless they're in like a mutual fund, if you actually personally own individual stocks and somebody comes in and alleges fraud that has something to do with one of the companies that you have a stock investment in, you are not allowed to be an investigator on it. If you're a judge, same story. You shouldn't be able to weigh in on some of these things. So if you could actually incentivize decent people to step into that role, who would do so sort of like against their will, but they're persuaded because there's enough financial benefit for them to do the right thing, maybe we could get that. Maybe that would move the needle. Otherwise, you end up with just wealthy people and people that don't care about corruption. That's my take on it. This is why we end up with people moving slowly. How many of us realized that we were going to get not even every member of the undersecretary or the people in the DOD are in place with Pete Hegseth? He was one of the first guys sworn in, one of the first confirmed, and all of his junior staff has not been. So he's surrounded by people from the last administration. These people don't go to work every single day the way that you or I would. If you told me, listen, we came in with a sweeping agenda and it is our job right now to pass this agenda. We need to get the people in place first, then we need to go and get the policies in place and vote on them, and then we need to get the funding. Wouldn't that make sense to you? I wouldn't sleep. This is why Elon Musk was there and sleeping on couches, is what we heard. And there's a story that came out, and I think it was on CBS's website. I actually didn't put it in the clips today. But a story came out talking about Elon Musk is about done with this because he's realizing that it doesn't matter how aggressive one man works. It doesn't matter how aggressive one man like Donald Trump, who never sleeps, it seems, who wakes up first thing in the morning and signs executive orders, who stays up all night and does executive orders. It doesn't make a difference how fast one guy works when the entire machine is incentivized to move slowly. The problem is we know it can move more quickly when it wants to. And you hear a lot of excuses. I'm going to play you the new Bongino rule. This is Jim Verdi. He's the former producer of the Bongino show. I guess he produces the Vince show now. He's talking to our friend Brianna Morello. Brianna is someone who's been very kind to the Suspendables, has always championed our cause. This is not a knock on either one of them, but this is the messaging that you're getting. The problem with the quote-unquote new Bongino rule, which you guys will see me sarcastically quoting on social media, there was an entire movement all last week talking about how to defend guys like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino from moving slowly in their space. This is because they know that government moves slowly. The problem is we've seen examples of it not moving slowly, and we've seen examples of it in the last 3 months. Here's the new Bongino rule as a refresher.
I'm saying we're going to apply a new Bongino rule to this because you're talking about turning probably the most massive aircraft carrier in the world, which takes a long, long time. New Bongino rule is to wait 6 to 8 months before you see results. I'm thinking you're going to see him sooner, but you have to give him time.
Okay, we have to give him time. It's got to be 6 to 8 months. That's how long it takes. Here's RFK Jr. sitting at a table with Marco Rubio, with Donald Trump, talking about how they are going to completely eliminate one of the biggest problems that people who have been paying attention to this show know about. The fact that HHS was complicit because of the whistleblowers that we've had on here, because the people who have made it their life work to stop child sex trafficking and work trafficking and moving illegal aliens in, that HHS, our federal government, was complicit in it. RFK Jr. saying, we've already stopped it. We've removed them from the chain. There is a way that you can move quickly, and this is under executive agencies. Same as DOJ, same as the FBI underneath the DOJ. Interior is saying the same thing. Energy is saying they are now restocking the strategic petroleum reserves based on what we heard yesterday. Some of these things can go very quickly. Well, how do we decide which ones get applied with this new Bongino rule? Is it just when Bongino's working at the place? RFK Jr. talking about this is a major problem, and they said they've addressed it head on because they went in knowing that this was a problem. I thought that's what we were voting for.
We have ended HHS as the role as the vector, the principal vector in this country for child trafficking. And during the Biden administration, HHS became a collaborator in child trafficking and for sex and for slavery. And we have ended that, and we're very aggressively going out and trying to find these children, the 300,000 children that were lost by the Biden administration.
Okay, there are things you can do quickly. There's only some things you can do, though. It's got to be within the executive purview. It can't be something with Congress. Congress has to pass money, and they have to put laws in place, and they have to change policies at an official level, the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations that governs the way that certain things work, right? Sorry, that wasn't, that's RFK, right? So he's at, is he at HHS? Yes. I don't know why I had a brain fart right there. The speed of government can move quickly in certain areas where you have purview. And the thing that caught my eye yesterday is that somebody went out and started sharing this clip. This was actually the House Democrats sharing this. They thought this was sympathetic to their position. Okay? They thought this was sympathetic to their position. They brought forward a crying former federal employee. This is a female former assistant United States attorney. That means that she used to work for DOJ and she was removed. This is the speed at which it can work. They got rid of probationary employees, right? We know that things can be done quicker. There are personnel moves you can do. You can suspend people. You can pull clearances. Tulsi Gabbard could go through at ODNI and start suspending clearances of people within the intelligence community that are working against U.S. interests, specifically Donald Trump's interests. You don't need an act of Congress to do that. You simply can suspend them because the suspendables have proved to you. The guys that show up on this show on a regular basis, the guys on the American Radicals podcast have showed you that you can take somebody's clearance and leave them in limbo for 32 months. 32 months will take us almost to the end of Donald Trump's term. It can be done. And here's an example. That new Bongino rule that I heard the other day and why people were talking about it, immediately I started laughing because there are examples within this current Trump 2.0 that prove that that is nonsensical. Okay. And DOJ is by no means the biggest animal in the federal government. It is not the biggest aircraft carrier. I'm going to show you some other things here. The upside is the opposition is crying about the wrong things and they're acting ridiculous. They're putting Kamala Harris and Tim Walz out. So there is time to actually do something, but they have to actually strike while the iron is hot. And they need to not be doing early snags, crafting massive bills. Small and nimble is the way.
And so I thought it was possible I could continue to serve that office. I was wrong. After 3 weeks of training and getting prepared for the next week, that Friday I left work. I walked to the metro station. I got on the train and I pulled out my phone and I saw a litigation hold that had been put on it. And attached to that was a memo that gave Mr. Martin permission to fire probationary employees from the Capitol Siege section that were moved to other places in the office. The memo referenced people, but didn't have a list of names attached. But the information provided was confusing. I knew I was probably on the list, but I didn't know exactly what was going on. I headed back to the office so I could figure out what was happening. I was met by my colleagues who shared their confusion and a heartbreak over this sudden event. We left the office, and 2 hours later, the letters started rolling in, terminating us. At the end,
2 hours later, it was a couple of days in, and then boom, you got rid of people and personnel. Why? Because personnel is policy, and policy is what you have the ability to affect. You can dramatically reduce the footprint of the federal government by getting rid of people, and that was one of them. And apparently, for leftists and people that are in the Democrat Party, that actually is a sympathetic moment. For me, that's like a victory. Looking at that, it's like, okay, yeah, tough titty. You lost your job. That's what happens. You were a probationary employee. Those were the terms of your employment. For the first 2 years, at any moment, for any reason, you could get removed. I had a friend who was removed because he didn't wear a tie to a court that he was not actually testifying in and wasn't even one of the agents of record. He was sitting in the gallery, and they tossed him out on the last day of his probation. A qualified FBI agent. Somebody who went through the academy, spent 18 months working on the actual job, and literally the day before was removed for no reason at all, simply because a female, a lot like that female, got it in her head that she could boss him around because for the day, she was the boss for the day. She wasn't even his real boss. She was an acting supervisor. If you can get rid of people for that, you can get rid of huge swaths of folks. For all kinds of reasons. And at the worst case scenario, you use this court case, Navy versus Egan, you pull their security clearance for anything in the intelligence sphere. Anybody who has a national security clearance that works for the federal government can be removed wholesale. You simply pull them out. Navy v. Egan says that they do not have the ability to appeal it. That's what happened to me as well. It's very effective, and we've seen examples of it over and over again at DOJ, at FBI. You could use it at ODNI. You could use it across the board. If personnel is policy and your policy is to move quickly, which is what Donald Trump showed us the first couple minutes that he was in the office, then you have to actually act like that. And again, it's not like the Democrats have their act together. I'm going to cover that in just one second. Before we do, let's talk about moving quickly and how things get going. This is how they get going in the Seraphin household. They get going with some blackout coffee, which we've been telling you about for the last couple months. I brewed some up this morning. It's the first thing I do. I walk over, my eyes don't even wake up, and I'm turning the grind button, and we make it happen over on the French press. It's not just another coffee brand. It is built on hard work and grit and American values. 6 years ago, those founders started in their home garage. Today, they're running a 64,000 square foot warehouse. They're roasting every single bean in-house and packing the orders themselves with Americans, 30 of them working hard to get your orders out the door without corporate nonsense, just damn good coffee made by people who actually give a damn about coffee, which actually shows. When I opened the bag this morning, I got the 10-pound bag, or the 5-pound bag rather, and I was like, I kind of want to just swim in this. There's like oil in there, like every good, coffee has the oils on the outside. The aroma is half the fun of actually going through the grind. In any case, it's not just about making a great cup of coffee. You're also supporting the American dream. We're doing one here. The American dream is that we get to still have a job despite being canceled by the government. They built their coffee company up the right way with no shortcuts and no woke nonsense. That's why they're sustainable. They don't have weak beans. They got strong minds to go out there and do hard work and demonstrate real values. It's coffee that gets you moving. You guys can see every day I'm amped up. I start off groggy with a toddler who's still potty training, and I can still keep going. We knock it out every morning here at full speed. Somebody told me they tried to listen at 1.75x and they couldn't keep up. You guys can go to blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Again, blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. Use Kyle for 20% off your first order. Figure out what flavors or what sort of variety you like, whether you're a medium or a dark roast or a light roast, etc. Get those things squared away and then set yourself up with a subscription and never forget. You'll figure out how fast you go through your bags. That's the right answer. Again, blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Stop drinking weak coffee. Get your stay started off the right way. Boil it up just like you're seeing there on the screen. That's how we do it. That's how we recommend it. And you will not be disappointed. It's a good cup of coffee. It really is. There's a few things that are like luxury items. I don't travel. I don't spend a lot of money on things outside the house. We don't go out to eat all that much. So, yeah. People said you're amped up without the coffee. I'm amped up because of the coffee, probably. Sometimes I have a headache. I drink so much of this stuff. I literally go through 2 liters by myself. I told my wife to brew up some more this morning. All right, so I'm gonna take a deep breath, and we're gonna keep going. Now, with the fact that we could move quicker, there are things that we voted for. There are things that we not voted for. This is one of the things that we actually voted for, whether you like it or not. This is coming in from CNN's reporting. I've got a New York Times story about it as well. We did vote to separate from China. Americans need to actually buckle down, particularly the MAGA type Americans that are going to go, okay, got it. Things are going to be a little bit tough. We had years of problems. You don't pull out of a tailspin right away. You're still on the dive even when you pull up. Think about a plane on a nosedive, okay? The pilot slumps over. He's out, airplane style, okay? You pull up the autopilot, which is the inflatable guy from the Airplane movie, and someone gets in there. When you start pulling back up on the yoke, it doesn't immediately stop losing altitude. You stop losing altitude as quickly for a little while. And then eventually you can pull up over the top and you don't hit the mountain, God forbid. This is a story saying the last boats without crippling tariffs from China have begun arriving. The countdown to shortages and higher prices has begun. Now's not a bad time to stock up on things. That's the reason why I think emergency food today was actually a pretty good read. I dialed it in just specifically. I looked into the future and I saw that they were going to run these stories. New York Times has a similar one. They're talking about how a $10 t-shirt should now become a $24.50 t-shirt. If you want to wean yourself off the cheap goods that Americans have become addicted to, that sort of easy life, then yeah, it's going to cost more money. The hope, though, is that we stop cheapening our money. We're kind of in this tailspin where our money has gotten cheaper, but it continues to buy enough things for us to be happy with it. I always remind myself that my parents paid like a 14% interest rate on their first mortgage when I was a kid. Their first house they bought was beyond their capabilities of affording. And I'm looking at a 7% and going like, nope. Why is that? Why is it that a 7% mortgage is insane to me when my parents were able to pay twice that much? One, the housing prices were not as inflated as much, so our dollar went further, so that's a piece of it. But the other thing is your expectation. We've been acclimated to a specific thing, and we think that a pair of jeans cost this. We think that a certain amount of money should buy a certain thing. The problem is our dollars are not worth as much. And a lot of that came from the last 4 years, which has been crippling, destroying the value of our currency. We've watched this happen left and right. So we're able to limp along only because we are dependent on the cheap drug of cheap Chinese products that keeps flooding into our country. Go figure. It's not sustainable. At some point, you have to bottom out and realize that there's going to be an austerity measure, and you're going to actually have some real tough times. But the question is, how tough are they really? I had this set up as maybe a palate cleanser, but I actually think it's really good. We talked about context the other day, and I think this is actually a useful thing to put ourselves in historical context for all of people in all of humankind. We have it so good in this country. Even when like the streets are burning and Portland was on fire, that was so local. How many of you actually saw streets in your cities on fire the way that they were in Portland? By the way, I went to Portland. It was awful. It didn't look good. But even in Portland, I wasn't in that much danger. I mean, I carried a hatchet around on the back of my belt in case I had to like take somebody down, but yes, I had my handgun as well. I'm just saying, like, it, even for being bad, it wasn't like there were shots popping off everywhere, that someone was going to come abduct me while I was sleeping in my hotel room. I drove 20 minutes outside of town. I think I was in like Beaverton, I think is the name of the town. It's fine. It's totally nice. I went for jogs in the morning, and then I went in and commuted in and watched Antifa idiots. So even when it's bad, is it really that bad? I don't think it is. This is for some historical context. Sometimes I hear these things, they're kind of like overdone with the music, and I go like, that's actually a good message. Check this out.
You get used to how great your life is. No one had a hot shower until 50 years ago. So I try and do this thing when you stand in a hot shower. George Mack, my friend, pointed this out to me. Well, look, when you stand in a hot shower, just for a moment, just go, well, no one that you admire from 100 years ago had this simple pleasure in life. And when you look at the world that we live in, we're like, there's been 100 billion people ever. Right? We are in the top percentile in terms of the luck that we have had, the lives, like the calorific intake that we just take for granted, the fact that our children don't die, in the first year, the modern medicine and our lives and the entertainment that we get. We're living like kings. And yet, life has never been objectively better and subjectively worse, because the nature of humanity is our desires are mimetic. So we've got this thing where we sort of, how happy are you? Well, it's your quality of life minus envy. That's how happy you are. And it's easy to look at everyone else and how they're doing and not take pleasure in what you have.
That seems very true to me. Even the poor in America live at a level that is incredible to people who live in other countries. It's a reason why people come here and they end up living in what we consider to be squalor, and it's appealing to them. Like, even if they knew, they would still come here. I got some stories about illegal aliens coming up in a little bit that kind of made me think about that. But it's not wrong. Think about who had a big TV when you were younger. Go back 20 years ago. I mean, I remember buying a TV that was 30 inches and it weighed 180 pounds. And it had to have two people move it into your house because it was enormous. And that was considered to be like massive. And it was like, man, that was well beyond my means. Can't believe I got such a good deal on this thing. Right? And now my kids look and see a 30-inch TV and they think that that's a small TV, because we have 80-inch TVs on like for less than $1,000. So even as our dollar has gotten weaker, these cheap goods that come in from these other countries have really changed the situation for us. We've actually adjusted our mental expectations. I'm living in a house right now. When I was talking to, we had an in-house interview, our first in-studio interview yesterday, which we'll have out for you in a little bit. It's going to take a little bit of time to put together because I did some remote guests and some local guests. And I was like, I wouldn't necessarily buy this house. because of the way that it was built. It was built cheaply, and yet it looks great. And it provides all the things that a house should do. Will it be standing in 50 years? I don't know. But then again, I spent a ton of money for a house right outside of Washington, D.C. that I can't imagine that the guys who built it thought was going to be standing up. You know, it was built in the early 80s and it was built like crap. Like all the studs were placed improperly. And yet it sold for a ton of money and it sheltered my family and it did what it was supposed to do. And if the guys who built it knew what we were selling it for in 2020 or 2021 or 2022, they probably would have fallen over dead. Because it was sold initially for like in the, you know, the $50,000 or $80,000 range, because it was just like this little row house. And when it's selling for, you know, 10 times that, people are like, wait, what? Yeah, like our money is worth less, but our quality of living goes up. These things, how happy can you be with what you got? I don't know. I think it's worth doing. And it reminds me that we should be happy that things are objectively better than they could have been, because we could have had this lady. And there she is. Kamala Harris has stepped out of her cave or her wine bottle, whatever it is that she's involved in these days. And she has decided to remind us of what we are missing out on. She's given Democrats a chance to see that FOMA, that fear of missing out. This is what they lost. They could have had it. It was almost there. It was within their grasp. The first female, black, Indian, pandering lady with a first husband. We almost had that. And we're going to play a little piece from her speech, which made me laugh. And the alternative leadership to Mike Johnson, I'm going to play that, which makes me laugh a little bit as well. Before we do, I'm going to say thanks to my buddies at Patriot Coolers. Now is a good time to get one of those. If you don't have one, if you're looking for a gift for someone, if you're looking to upgrade your own life, this is something that I swear by, and I do because I've been using them for coming up on like 8 years, I want to say. PatriotCoolers.com is the website. PatriotCoolers.com, the promo code KYLE, my name, will save you 10%. This is a 20 ounce. This is a really good size. I used to always be like, buy the biggest possible, and that's what I wanted. And then I went and I bought a smaller one, and I was like, ooh, I really like the way this feels. This is great for a little drive. Keeps your beverages hot or cold. We use them all day long in the Seraphin household. We drop them, we bang them around, we spill them nonstop, and yet they do not spill because I just click this. Look at that. There's coffee in there right now. I'll show you right there. You see? There's the coffee. Boop. Fantastic spill-proof lids. Great products. Good people. They won't cancel you for being a conservative. They will print whatever logo you want. If your business needs to have some custom stuff, they do in-house etching. So they've got a big supply of those sitting in their warehouse down in Texas. And if you need to get something shipped fast and made for them, check them out. You can customize them, or you can get the Kyle Seraphin Show collection, which means you're going to get some of our logo stuff on there. Knock yourself out at PatriotCoolers.com. Promo code KYLE lets them know that we sent you along. All right, you guys want to have a little bit of a fear? This is what we missed out on. We almost had this. We almost had her, but we don't. Kamala Harris talking to, I don't know, some people.
And folks, what we are experiencing right now is exactly what they envisioned for America.
Right.
Right now, we are living in their vision for America.
For America. She's got a lot of time in between the things that she says, because she's trying to make it count. It's not that effective. Yeah, we almost had Kamala Harris, right? We almost could have Hakeem Jeffries, who is making a clown of himself as well. So no matter how frustrated I get, Bongino rule aside, speed of government aside, I still am reminded that this was almost the reality. This guy could be running. If we had the suite go the opposite way, if the American people, by and large, thought we could do this, let's just lean into it. Let's go hard left. Let's go Biden, and then let's raise the ante here and do Hakeem Jeffries and Kamala Harris. It could have sounded like this. This guy apparently didn't know when to trail off properly. He's got Chuck Schumer standing next to him, which is pretty funny. Listen to this, and you know what's coming if you know the show. Here's Hakeem Jeffries talking about the budget problem and Republicans hitting those snags.
Of the health care of the American people. It is outrageous that Donald Trump and congressional Republicans are trying to enact the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. They will hurt families, hurt children, hurt seniors, hurt women, hurt veterans, and hurt disabled Americans. Hospitals will close, nursing homes will shut down, and people will die.
Uh-oh, you know what he said. If you guys know, you know. There's our chat. This is our YouTube chat. This is our Rumble chat up on the screen right now. Then, unfortunately, we can't combine them yet. Listen to that. He said the magic words.
These cuts are blood money.
That's right.
People will die. Let's be very clear. Senate Republicans are paying for tax cuts for the wealthy.
It's always the same, isn't it?
American lives.
People need kidneys, it's sad but decreed, yet the senator's hoarding one more than she needs. I offer this bill and I hope you'll vote aye, unless of course you just want people to die. Traffic deaths have many crying with fear. Over 30,000 people are dying each year. This modest change I propose must be applied, unless of course you just want people to die. Alcohol.
How do they get like that? Like, who wrote that? Is he doing an ad lib? Is this just coming out of nowhere? Again, this is what happens when you're floundering without leadership, I suppose. They're bringing out Tim Walz. He's out there trying to talk. That's pretty funny, too. Here's Scott Jennings getting a little take on what happens when you bring out a guy whose signature move is... Do you guys know what it is? Tell me in the chat what the signature move of Tim Walz is. No, it's not dancing to the dancing queen of ABBA.
I think when your signature move is jazz hands, you're not as up on the white guy code maybe as you think you are. I mean, everything about this guy from the choice, which was made, I think Shermichael's correct, which was made out of weakness all through his campaign appearances. And now in the aftermath, I just don't think there's ever been anybody in recent political history in over their head more than Tim Walz. And
did you meet Dan Quayle?
It is amazing to me. It is amazing to me.
Dan Quayle is
he
her
served
example.
a term, did he not?
Yeah, and then lost a second.
It is amazing to me that Democrats elevated this guy and that he continues to believe that he is going to be a leader of this party in 2028. The problems that the Democrats have with middle America, white men, working class men, if this is the road we're going down, the code talker Tim Walz are only going to get worse for Democrats.
And maybe that's why this is the article that popped up today. I don't know why it appealed to me to talk about men shaving off their eyelashes, but that's it. There's only one group of men that are doing that. Are there a single group of, are there any church-going married husbands and fathers that are making that move? Are there any? If you guys know one, please let me know. Put it in a comment. Put it in an email. You can email us, by the way, it's info@KyleSeraphin.com. If I don't get it, I don't get what the appeal is. Same as this guy. This is your senator who just decided to take national prominence. That's Van Hollen right there from Maryland. And between the senator and a Maryland judge, they are trying to push the Trump administration to get this dude from MS-13 back. They're still in the news. This is another story from today. It is still ongoing. So this is the alternative. The alternative is you get this dude, pasty white, albino looking, representing, he's heroically representing the little brown guy who also happened to just be like a career criminal, who also happened to be not an American citizen and therefore not his constituent. You know, that sort of makes sense, I guess. We should be counting our blessings in some ways. And we also have this massively dishonest media, which continues to be mind-blowing to me. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of these are clips that I can't help. I was like, how do these fit in? They fit in like this. The reason we can have such a clown-based federal government, that we can have such a clown-based political environment, is because people on the left and our people on the right are actually all sort of doing the same thing. This is all laser pointer distractions. Every single thing here is silliness. I've got a story from NPR talking about people fleeing authoritarian regimes. Then I've got a follow-up story from NBC that's going to show you something funny. But in the meantime, what are the Republican side doing? What is the Trump administration doing? Mixed bag. Sometimes they're getting rid of all those prosecutors, like we saw that lady crying. Sometimes they're getting RFK Jr. to make movement forward. And sometimes they're claiming we need time in 6 to 8 months and people will die. And we have to go and work through these stupid, huge funding bills, which were the opposite of what we were saying. And sometimes they invite this guy. This is Dom McCree sitting in front, because they're now doing spectacles where they just invite like a bunch of podcasters and Twitter influencers to sit there. This is one of the most ignorant questions I've ever heard anyone ask sitting in the press secretary briefing. It's embarrassing on its face to me. Just the way that he phrases it, it's dumb. This guy who constantly is running around either stealing other people's stuff or making false claims. Like, what are we doing with this? This is also a problem. And I'm going to go from Twitter influencer to Fox News, like basically the entire spectrum of the political right. And all of it is also sort of cartoonish and silly.
Thank you for giving me the honor to be able to ask a question to provide some transparency for the American people. Speaking of, I wanted to reference the election integrity. A lot of people in America are questioning if there's any possibility that we could see further investigations for anyone that could have violated our election integrity rights. And more importantly, so is there any possibility for names such as Barack Hussein Obama, Hillary Rodham Clinton to ever just possibly get investigated for any of these, questions from the American people, for any of the wrongdoings they might have done?
Well, it's refreshing to actually hear a question on election integrity, because the legacy media would never ask such a question. They're so out of touch with where the American people are on this issue. And Americans, you're absolutely right, want to have trust in our electoral system. Without free and fair elections, you cannot have a free and fair country.
Okay, fine. So what are you guys doing on that? By the way, his injection of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and misspeaking almost all the words and all those phrases didn't mean anything. It's just awful. It's really bad. Like the honor of the ask of the question or whatever the hell he just said, like just bad. But it tells you a lot about what people will listen to. Like they're cheering it on in the same way they're cheering on Hakeem Jeffries, who went out there and said people will die. It's equally dumb. All of it's bad. Here's maybe the worst. This is what I'm calling the Mutual Admiration Society. It's the same that I always see when you see the FBI Agents Association praising the director of the FBI. The FBI director praises all the good men and women of the FBI. Then they go all on Sean Hannity and they all talk about how everyone's great. This is like, it's just a circle jerk. It's the George Carlin, one big club, we're not in it. The only people that actually lose out on this are regular people who expected the thing that was being promised. This makes me sad to watch. Here's Sean Hannity pumping up his buddy because all of this stuff is about access. Everyone here is afraid they're going to lose access. Maybe another reason why members of Congress could make more money. We didn't have to go do this crap. It's performative nonsense. And I understand that it's taken me a while to warm even to the idea of it, but maybe they'd have some freaking self-respect and not have to sit there and only grant interviews. Do you know that how many people have told me, I would like to ask this congressperson, I would like to ask this politician a difficult question, but I have to be very careful about it because I want them to still come back on the show the next time. How about it is your duty to go and interface with your constituents? And it is the duty of people in the news media, it used to be at least, to actually ask difficult questions and hold them to account. You can't pretend like you're a journalist now if all you're going to do is go a scripted question, which is terrible, and then have the press secretary say, it's so refreshing to have you ask that dumbass question you just asked. Here's Sean Hannity doing essentially the same exact garbage, except listen to how long he talks. He talks about how Jim Jordan is his friend. He talks about how many lists Jim Jordan makes, which is not the job of Congress. They're supposed to make laws and pass funding. He talks about how he likes to make lists better. This is all crap. It's as bad as anything that's out there, but it does show you kind of a little insight into it. None of these people are journalists, not in the traditional sense of it. And none of these people seem to have any freaking principles, which is why we did a show about it yesterday.
House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. One of the things I love about you, and I love a lot of things about you, is, during all of the many unfair attacks against President Trump, you usually had the most comprehensive list of anybody out there. You even beat me, and I pride myself on my listing.
So. Yeah.
And but go through what it means to you, the change in 100 days. What is it like for somebody that had lived, kind of in the wilderness, fighting against a system that was stacked against you?
Yeah, 100 days of winning is what we've seen from President Trump and his administration. But for me, the three biggest things are the border is secure, military recruitment for our armed services is now off the chart because they believe in our leader. But maybe the most important thing, the third element, is every single federal agency now works for we the people. Instead of
bullshit. Okay? Anybody that tells you that just because we put the name, that's like saying we're under new management, but we have the same kitchen staff. It's got the same rot in there. There's the same mice and roaches running around in the back end. But now we have a new name. It's under new management. There's a new front of the house manager at the restaurant. Are you going back? Maybe once. It's a mixed bag. And to claim that the border is now secure, I don't believe you, and neither does anybody else. It's huge. Until the wall is finished and we have freaking machine gun posts and we got the moat with the alligators, just shut up about that. That's nonsense. You don't measure the success of an agency by its recruiting. That's a PR messaging. Wait till those troops get in there and realize that they're still not putting Donald Trump's picture up as commander-in-chief at the Air Force Academy. I just saw that this morning. I talked to Sam Shoemate. We're going to have him on the program soon to start talking about the fact that even though we've heard a lot of messaging about DOD recruitment and the fact that DOD is reinstating all of those veterans that got removed for the COVID mandate, I don't know a single person who's been reinstated. Do you? If you do, please, I would like to actually talk to that person. I would like to boost their story and find out what it took to get back in. We found out that some people are taking a 6 to 10 month road, even though they were appointed by President Trump long before. It's just not going to happen. So has anybody been reinstated because of the COVID vaccine mandates? We heard they were illegal, immoral, unethical, etc. We heard Pete Hegseth say it. Is there any transmission from verbiage and messaging to actual policy and implementation? When you terminate people, that's a real way to do it. But they haven't gotten rid of that stuff wholesale. And a lot of it is because all we're doing is we're doing messaging here over and over. That was Jim Jordan with Hannity. Here's another Jim Jordan. Again, he's my friend. He's my favorite. He makes fantastic lists. Everything about him is amazing. No, it's like some wins, some losses. How come we can't just be honest and say, look, we got a lot of work to do here. There's a lot more that needs to happen. Here he is getting fluffed up again on Fox Business.
Joining us now is the center of 100 Days, House Judiciary Chair, Mr. Jim Jordan, my very dear old friend. Jim Jordan, you're the head of Judiciary. You heard the president. You got all these rogue activists, left-wing, God knows what judges. You know, they're trying to weaponize the system against Trump still.
They're trying to weaponize him, so get rid of the people that are doing it. How about the people that work inside the intelligence community? We had some reporting come in, kind of like background information. Someone said like 80% of the United States IC, the intelligence community, is working against Donald Trump's agenda in the resistance. Why? Because intel people are overwhelmingly educated in American institutions for higher education, which means they're indoctrinated towards leftism. Those people still have their own agenda. They still are doing the same thing. You think you got rid of the quote unquote deep state because you put a new guy in charge of it? It's crap. As somebody who has managed a restaurant, which I did, when you go in, you've got to do one of two things. You've either got to rebrand it and hope that nobody notices and just go along with what you got, or you got to fire everybody that was part of the old thing that was problematic. And you got to fire more people than you wanted, and maybe you hire them back. Maybe you do. This nonsense of going on Fox messaging tours and talking about how great you are. Meanwhile, we're getting distracted on the other side, too, because now they're messaging it as well. This is Natalie Winters, who I don't have any personal interaction with, but Steve Friend, who's regularly our Friday guest, said she's very bright. I'm sure she is. She's very articulate. She's pretty. She's not conservative, as far as I can tell, because if she was, she'd be married and having kids. She's kind of like that right-wing feminist, which is the thing that I constantly find out to be at odds with what I believe conservatism looks like, which is why I'm not a Republican, but she seems like a Republican. Nice enough lady, and she's out there getting questions by CNN. Now CNN is covering the story of quote-unquote new media and saying you guys aren't journalists. Well, none of them are journalists. They're all just doing this circle jerk. It continues to be people. It's like I'm scratching your back and you're scratching my back and he's scratching his back and we're all in a big circle here. We're all scratching backs. Nothing is getting done and nobody is actually being honest about it because God forbid we interrupt that circle to say, hey man, that's not where I want to be scratched. You're not actually doing a good job. Then all the scratching stops. It's much better to keep the ball in the air so everyone just gets lulled into complacency. Meanwhile, they're not going to pass the work that Congress is actually supposed to be doing.
You don't deserve to be here because you're not a real journalist. What's your response to them?
Well, I'm pretty sure the group of people in there spent, 4 years covering for someone who was essentially dead, and that's being charitable in my description of him, a president by the name of Joe Biden. So to all those people who are apoplectic over having new media voices, you guys failed, and that's why we're here.
Okay, she's not wrong about that either, though, right? She's not. Here's coverage. This is from they allowed this to happen in 2021. I was working for the FBI at the time. I remember this. So do many of you. April 28th, 2021. I was in the middle of getting ready for a move. This is during the COVID time. They did a State of the Union where only select people were invited and everybody had to wear a mask. Do you remember how ridiculous this was? This was the first couple months of the Biden presidency. And I've got a show of the decline, which he's talking about. And what we keep hearing about is like, we just dodged this bullet. This dude almost got to go on a second term. He at least was on the ticket. Right?
When I was sworn in on January 20th, less than 1% of the seniors in America were fully vaccinated against COVID-19. 100 days later, 70% of seniors in America over 65 are protected, fully protected. It's like every shot is giving a dose of hope. Is the phrase, a dose of hope. A dose of hope for an educator in Florida who has a child suffering from an autoimmune disease. Wrote to me, said she's worried, and she was worried about bringing the virus home. She said she then got vaccinated at a large site in her car. She said she sat in her car when she got vaccinated and just cried. Cried out of joy and cried out of relief. Parents, seeing the smiles on their kids' faces for those who are able to go back to school because the teachers and school bus drivers and cafeteria workers have been vaccinated.
It was a dose of hope. It was so hopeful that if you don't get it, we're going to take your job and take your livelihood and kick you out on the streets and tell you that you're not fit to serve and that you might be the reason that America is declining. It's all your fault. Remember that, asshole? There's no other way to say it. That is an evil, evil plan. That was diabolical stuff, and that went on. So, we dodged a bullet, no doubt. It's better than it could have been. Context, everything. But is it as good as it should be? I don't know. Here's another good example. This is, by the way, this is why you have Dom LaCree sitting in the White House press secretary briefing, is because this stuff was happening from the other news. Who's equally bad? Also nonsensical.
Trump has said he'd debate Biden anytime, any place. It looks like Joe Biden has taken him up on that. Let's see what the president's saying.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debates. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
Here he is.
Eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Yeah, got it. So we get it.
And
this
folks,
is the problem.
what we are experiencing right now is exactly what they envisioned for America.
That's what they envisioned, yeah.
Right now, we are
Say America
living
again.
in their vision for America.
I don't think so. I don't think we actually are living in their vision for America. In fact, our vision of America would be a lot more aggressive than what we're seeing right now. NPR covering this one. People who fled authoritarian regimes say Trump's tactics remind them of home. There's a story of a guy, and he came from Hungary, and he snuck into this country. And so now he runs an organization called Action for Democracy, which is very similar to what we saw in the New York Times article, which I'll cover in just a second here. And it just said, yeah, these are authoritarian threats. I saw this story, and then right on the heels of it, I saw this. Columbia student, that's the University of New York, not the country. Columbia student, Mohsen Madawi, he's been released from ICE detention. Well, why was that? Because I heard it was pretty authoritarian that they did it. Why was he released? He's a 34-year-old green card holder. He was raised in a refugee camp. And he was released because a judge said so. He was arrested, detained in Vermont during a naturalization interview, and he's been required to be released from custody. Because we're so authoritarian that we're in a constitutional crisis, because when the judge says that somebody must be released on U.S. soil, they prove it that they are authoritarians by complying with what the judge said. Found another story. This one is from CBS. Is that right? Let me double check. Nope, this one is a nice profile from NBC. He was tortured by the Taliban, but will he be sent back to Afghanistan? Isn't it amazing that the people who are so sad about these illegal aliens coming into this country, in this case, this guy was from Afghanistan, made a multi-thousand-mile journey, and came into the United States illegally. A brutal journey like that has anything to do with whether or not he broke the law here. That spanned 9 countries and 4,000 miles. He was robbed in Brazil and Colombia. He was extorted by police officers in Guatemala. It is very full on atmospherics and emotions. A lot of heartstrings being tugged right there. But here's the story. How many bits did they mention in this story that Joe Biden, their former guy who was on the ticket, was the one responsible for handing that entire country over to the Taliban? 0 times. Not once. This is why when people looked at it and we laughed about being unburdened by what has been, you cannot be unburdened by what has been. You are always burdened by what has been. And if we're being honest about it, we have to be like, everything is not perfect, but it's actually better than it should be. It's better than we deserve. You ever heard that in the South? It's one of my favorite expressions. How you doing today, brother? Oh, I'm better than I deserve. And you're like, wow, what do you deserve? Why is it better than you deserve? It's a great expression. It's humility. It says that, things could be far worse. That is a very Southern thing to say. It is people that are grounded in God and humility say things like that. I have never once heard someone say better than I deserve in the Northeast. Not once. Nothing against y'all. I just haven't heard it. It just didn't happen. I was in D.C. for 5 years. I've been in New York. My wife's family's from New York. I have never heard somebody in the city of New York that was not from, that was not from the South and recently from the South say better than I deserve. We're all kind of doing better than we deserve. So it's worth doing that. So all the complaining, and I do plenty of it on this because it does bother me that we're not getting better than that. It could have been the Biden guy. It could have been this.
Eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Man, I wish we beat Medicare. I don't know what that even means, but I wish we had done it. Okay, yeah. Being tortured by the Taliban sounds terrible. Sending people back into chaos is a problem. But looking into what's going on and realizing that the people who are actually responsible are the same guy that you were promoting and praising, that takes a little bit of self-reflection. We don't see a ton of it on the right. We don't see a ton of it on the left. It's why I'm always going to make people upset on either side. I'm going to tell you things that I think you may not agree with me. Put it in the comments. That's okay. Here's something that I find fantastic as well. Whenever you're trying to make an argument, it's funny when you're trying to make a financial argument when you don't go far enough back. It's like you're one step away from being there. How about this story that came out of CNN? This also made me laugh. Undocumented immigrants. This is a couple talking points I've seen people punching out there. Jasmine Crockett was covering it as well. Undocumented immigrants contribute more to Social Security than they receive in benefits. Oh, really? So we should keep people here because of finances. The same people that tell you that there's a problem at looking at the world as a financial transaction, the ones that are the bleeding heart libs that said we should just do it because it's the right thing to do, those are the same people that are trying to make an economic argument to you. The fact of the matter is, maybe they get more money into Social Security than they receive in Social Security payments. But I assure you, the cost of what it takes to put their kids through school, the hospital benefits that we are paying for, it is not even close that they cost a net drain on American society. I've worked in ERs. I've seen people come in who speak no English that require us to keep on staff an English translator because Congress, that same group that can't get a budget together or pass single line items, they also passed a bill in the 90s that said every single person must be treated regardless of their ability to pay, which on its face sounds really good, as long as you actually have your country serving those who are supposed to be in the country. But what happens when you take on millions? What happens when you have Jim Jordan telling you that the border is now secure because the new guy is in and we don't want to claim any losses? An honest and responsible adult would walk into a house that was a mess and say, I have inherited a mess and it's going to be messy for a little while because I cannot snap my fingers or wave a magic wand and fix it. What I'm going to do is fire all the people who made the mess. Part one, I'm going to hire new people. There's a biblical thing in this. I feel like the workers at the vineyard is coming to mind. Fire all the old people that did a bad job. We're going to hire in new people. It's going to take us a little bit of time to train them, but at least we're going to stop the bleeding and the dissent. We're going to stop the crazy. We're going to stop this story, which I actually would have thought if you'd asked me to bet on it, I would have told you this was NPR. This is an ABC News story. It is amazing. The United States funds that supported Nepal, our vested interest in Nepal. The United States funds that supported Nepal's growing LGBTQ plus community is no longer there. The money has been pulled. Many support center for Nepal's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and plus communities have been closed since the Trump administration began dismantling USAID, and they do it like it's a sad story. You cannot make this part up. I have absolutely no idea what Americans who are working every day for a living, who are going and working at a gas station as a convenience store clerk, who are going out and teaching in schools, who are working in a machine shop, who are doing plumbing or construction, who are laying down roads, who are working as auto mechanics. What in the actual hell do you know about the growing lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer community in Nepal, and how much will it affect you that we are no longer funding it? I imagine your reaction is cheering. It's pretty crazy. Again, it's all about context. So I do have a palate cleanse for you guys because I've done several days without him, and I wanted to give you a good one. This is Tyler Fisher. We're going to wrap up with a little take that he has on why he thinks what's going on. And I think the ending on a Nepalese lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community story is a good way to do it. Before we end the show, I'm going to make the request to you. If you guys are watching on Rumble right now and you're seeing that we are capped, and we are indeed capped, and you have the ability to watch on YouTube, I would ask you to watch on YouTube. We get significantly more. It costs you nothing more. You'll get a better audio feed. You can join the same chat. We'll be able to have them in the both. I would like to see if we can migrate some of our community from Rumble over to YouTube. I know you don't like them, but they've taken a block off that we've seen, and it's dramatic. It's very strong reaction to see growth on that level. We've picked up something like 8,000 followers or 7,000 followers in the last 60 days. That's more than I've been able to grow in the last year on Rumble. We are capped there, and I'm looking at the data, and it's very clear to me that Rumble is artificially giving views to other shows. We have far more likes and interactions and comments than these things. They are all fake over there. And I've had a buddy tell me he's seen the back end of what it looks like, and it is indeed fake. Unless they are part of the quote-unquote Rumble lineup, we're not going to get promoted. I know you guys don't like YouTube. I haven't liked it much either, but every one of you has a YouTube account. So the request is consider watching the live show over on YouTube. If you're part of our live watchers, we'll have the same chat up there. We can move all the same people over there, and I will continue to broadcast over there. I just want to see if we can try it. We could do it for a week and see if it works. You don't have to support them. You're supporting me. That's the request. Let me give you a palate cleanse. Before we do, one more thing. If you guys want to send something to the show, and some of you have, and I appreciate them, although I don't know what the lure is, I get a big kick out of it. So you guys are making my kids happy as I go and pick up mail at our P.O. Box. It's 9073 West State Highway 29. It's Suite 110, Box 509, Liberty Hill, Texas. A good hill to die on. That's 78642. You guys can see it up here. We'll have it in the show description. It'll probably pop up in the chat because Rose is so good about doing that. We appreciate our chat moderators over on Rumble. You guys are fantastic. I'm not saying that we don't want to have a community there. Just want to see if we can try something out. Again, this is one guy show, so if you guys want to support the program, it's a way that we can try something. I just want to see what it does. I don't know what it's going to do. Let's do a palate cleanse here. Let's take a deep breath and a breather. This is a story about Robert De Niro. It's coming from one of my favorite comedians who used to do a very good Trump impression. You guys will get a kick out of this. Let's end the show with these thoughts from Tyler Fisher.
Okay, so I don't know if you heard, but my friend just said, oh, so hey, Robert De Niro's daughter came out as trans. And I said, oh, so she's going to be a boy. And he was like, no, that's transphobic. She came out as trans. And I said, well, if she's coming out as trans, then she's turning into a boy. He's like, no, dude. He goes, you're being really, really offensive right now. He goes, it was a he and is now a she. And I go, well, wait a minute. So he becoming a she isn't transphobic? He's like, no, he transitioned to a girl.
From what?
I was like, so he's a girl. He's like, no, she was always a girl. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. So if she was always a girl and was born a girl and felt like a girl, then you can't transition into a girl. You're just a girl. You're a girl transitioning into a girl. And it's like, no, you're being really offensive. I was like, no, you're being retarded. And now I feel fucking insane, and we've gotten nowhere. And so that's why Trump won.
That's why Trump won. That's it. That's why Trump won. Because that's crazy. Again, it could be a lot worse. I'll be happy for the blessing we have. Better than we deserve, perhaps. Especially considering the state of our nation. All right, folks, that's it for today. I really appreciate all of you. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for a Friendly Friday. We will switch up our hold music over on Rumble starting next week. That's how it works. God bless you. See you again.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.